Sure, Joey. I call my story the Lookie stand. That's my moment of healing. I remember biking those 3 miles from my home to my Zoroastrian fire temple, passing a lake with a beautiful little island on it. I would park my bike outside the temple, walk up the steps to get inside, where I had to first go to a little washroom to wash my hands and face before I could actually step inside the sanctified temple space. In the temple, there was this little, very sacred room in which there was an urn as tall as me, which stood on a 3-step pedestal. And on the urn were logs of sandalwood that were kept burning constantly by the temple priests. No one except the priests were allowed inside that room. I would stand at the entrance of that room or at one of its several large windows and look at the fire, which represents God's righteousness, and pray. My eyes fixed on the fire, I would be breathing the fragrance of sandalwood and feeling God's presence there. This was my time with God in this temple. As I was growing up in India, whenever I felt the urge to be with God, I would get on my bike and go to my temple, whose doors were never locked. Then I got married and came here to the States. There was no temple here. I didn't know what to do when I wanted my alone time with God. I felt hopeless at times. I tried to create a sacred space in my home, but it was not the same. I had kids, I was working, and I volunteered in my community, but I knew that there was something really important that was missing in my life. I always felt bad that my kids and all the other kids of my religious community would never get to experience the presence of God in that holy fire temple the way I did growing up. My love for God was so strong because of those experiences of my childhood. I wanted to help these children develop a strong relationship with God and a strong love for God. I started teaching religion classes and having annual camps for Zoroastrian kids. During one such camp, some years ago, I was talking to the kids about our religious places of worship in India. The kids began asking me why they couldn't have such a place of worship here. I told them we had started fundraising and someday in the future, we will have such a place. But it could take several years. Suddenly, that day, all the kids decided that they wanted to help me raise funds during that very camp. They put their heads together and came to me requesting if I would allow them to have a lemonade and cookie stand the next day. I told them that if they chose to do this, they would have to miss their fun evening activity I had scheduled for them. They didn't mind. They wanted to help so we could build the temple sooner. They called their lemonade stand the Lookie stand for their lemonade and cookies. The next day after our class ended, the kids got to work in teams. One team was in charge of making cookies, one in charge of making lemonade, one in charge of the stand itself, and one in charge of bringing orders from our neighbors. As I was helping them, I experienced an amazing sense of fulfillment. These kids were putting into action what we were learning in class over the years. How we humans should adopt the great qualities of God to make our world a wonderful place for everyone. And here they were showing me God's qualities like kindness, respect, love, sincerity, hard work, their cooperation with one another, their wonderful team spirit, sincerity, hard work, their cooperation with one another, their wonderful team spirit, and their positive and cheerful attitude. In that moment, I realized I was suddenly feeling that same sacred feeling of God's presence that I used to feel in the fire temple in India. That same sense of amazing peace, bliss, and serenity. Unwittingly, these kids had healed me of my hopelessness by showing me I did not need a temple to feel God's presence. Since that moment, I see and feel God everywhere, every day, in all the good people and their good actions around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's a beautiful story, Becca. Maybe we could just take 1 second and take a deep breath in